Hi everyone and welcome back. So we obviously use language to communicate, to educate, to share ideas, to socialise, but language can be weaponised. Not with swearing, I'm not talking about swearing or slang, but with careful crafting and manipulation of words. And this can be used to control thought, to control our thoughts, to shape our opinions, and that ultimately can be used to shape society itself. And when it's used to control, it's not done overtly, it's done subconsciously, it's done in the background, if you like. Have a listen to this. If you control the words, you control the conversation. If you control the conversation, you control the culture. And if you control the culture, you control the people. We call Australia a democracy. But let me ask you, is it really democratic? Is it really a democracy? We call our legal system the justice system. But is it really just? I'm just asking the question. You've probably heard people labelled fascists, Nazis, racists, bigots. But are they actually? Look, fascism has a meaning. According to Britannica, it says, although fascist parties and movements differed significantly one from another, they had many characteristics in common, including extreme militaristic nationalism, contempt for electoral democracy, and political and cultural liberalism, a belief in natural social hierarchy and the rule of elites, and the desire to create a Volksgemeinschaft, which is obviously German for the people's community, in which individual interests would be subordinated to the good of the nation. So today, if you have a different opinion to that of the mainstream, there are some people out there who will label you a fascist. They obviously have no idea as to what the word means. I remember in the 1990s, there was an interview on 60 Minutes with Pauline Hanson where she was asked whether she was a xenophobe. And her response was, please explain.
Are you xenophobic? Please explain.
And it became an epic phrase. Everyone knew, please explain, back in the 90s. But who knew what xenophobia was in the 1990s? I certainly didn't. I mean, I was young, but I don't think anyone did. And this is relatively new terminology. Even though the word has been around since the late 1800s, it wasn't really made popular and mainstream until after Pauline's interview. She was stumped. She didn't even know what they were talking about. Now, people use it every day. So throughout history, methods that authorities have used to control thought have evolved. Obviously, they've tried with direct force, martial law, death, torture, but that doesn't really work in the long term, does it? It creates resistance, rebellion, and then ultimately that leads to revolution. People see the tyranny and it comes to a point where all hell's going to break loose. And they don't want that, so maybe let's try policy. Let's try policy, and you've got social media and Google and so on. Let's get rid of harmful content. Let's enforce community standards to protect the public. Right? This community standards thing, we've been through that over the last 5 years at least. But what seems to be even more effective and seems to be coming into effect a lot more frequently is to reframe the person, reframe the individual entirely. If authorities, the media as well, if they can frame an individual in a negative way publicly, you think to yourself, but I kind of agree with what this person said or they did, but they've been labelled. Many are going to be very quiet. They're going to keep their mouth shut. They don't want to be labelled. So rather than just suppress speech entirely with violence or policy, they don't need to ban you anymore. Instead, they can label you. They can stick a label on you. What you're doing is you're spreading misinformation. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're using hate speech. You're an extremist. You've got anti-authority views. Oh, I love this one, the anti-authority views. Tell me who's pro-authority. I've no issues with authority. I'm not anti-authority, but authority needs to be kept honest. It needs to be scrutinised. That's not anti-authority. Anyway, we'll talk about that. So really now they don't need to stop you from saying anything. They're using this method instead. They're framing it like, if you speak up, if you ask questions, if you buck the system, if you go against the grain, you're a bad person. And we'll call you out on it. This is the way Jacinta Allen talks. It reminds me of a high school principal. We won't tolerate that. Come to my office right now. That sort of thing. Dan Andrews was exactly the same. This is how they're trained. But they're ready to label you for using your God-given brain. And no one wants that. No one wants to be labelled. So people self-censor. They self-censor. It's perfect. It's genius. No force. An excellent method of control. And these words, or these labels, are engineered to control how you think. That's ultimately what it comes down to control what you say. And it's done so that you don't really even notice. You're distracted, you're busy. This is psychological warfare. Language can be used to create self-policing of the public. They want to make you afraid to even think certain thoughts. Have you read George Orwell's 1984? Have you watched the movie? Read the book? There's a term in 1984, I highly recommend that you watch it just out of pure interest. It was released in the 60s. There's a term, doublespeak. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. This obviously makes no sense, right? But this isn't just a book. It's a concept. It's an idea on how to slowly gain complete control over people's thoughts. And we're heading down that path right now. In Victoria, just a number of years ago, there was a press conference happening every morning, and behind the speaker were the terms, or were the phrase, "staying apart keeps us together," printed right behind the speaker. How does staying apart keep anyone together? Millions of people watch these presses every day, and no one really sort of sat there and said, why are we saying staying apart keeps us together? Is that how relationships themselves succeed, by staying apart? The other one I wanted to talk about is, I've heard this one a little bit lately in the media. These individuals had anti-authority views. There was some people raided in WA because apparently, from what I understand, it was believed that they held anti-authority views. So this suggests that anybody who questions anything that's said on TV or in the paper or on government websites is anti-authority. And if you have anti-authority views, it must mean that you're an anarchist, that you hate authority, that you're deemed dangerous. And you might even be classed as likely to behave unlawfully. You may not have behaved unlawfully, but we feel that, he's likely to behave unlawfully. This is very dangerous. Is the default position supposed to be pro-authority? Is that how it's supposed to work? I'd like to know who's actually completely pro-authority. Who loves speed cameras? If you do love a speed camera, stick your hand up and throw a comment down below. Do you like all of the surveillance cameras? They're popping up on every corner now. What about the tax? Maybe we need some more taxes. What about the inflation, the government debt here in Australia? We're over $1 trillion. In the US, what is it, $37 trillion now? Do you love your council rates? You love all of that? Then you're top of the class. You're pro-authority. You're exactly where they want you to be. You hold pro-authority views, and you're of no threat to anyone. But who out there actually is, or who actually fits that profile in reality? I've never met anyone who fits that profile. What about misinformation and disinformation? We decide what's true. This is where our friends over at the AAP come in, the fact checkers, the Australian Associated Press, who are owned by, or run by, a group of shadowy philanthropists who have our best interests at heart. You've just got to trust these guys, right? They've got lots of money and they're there to help you, right? Now, and I get that there's a lot of garbage online, there is a lot of rubbish, but what do we expect? We can't have the Ministry of Truth out of 1984. We can't have the Ministry of Truth deciding everything for us. We need open debate. We need open discussion, transparency. We need informed individuals who use their brains and think. We don't need misinformation labels. The other big thing is all of this safety business. Safety. It's all about your safety. It's all for your protection. Look, if you're watching and you're over in the US, I don't know whether it's as bad as what it is over here, particularly in Victoria, but we have to give up our rights willingly. Not too long ago, we had curfews. Stay inside. Stay apart. Social distance. Another great example of doublespeak. How do the terms social and distance get used together? You're either social, which means that you're close, or you're distant, which means that you're far. Okay? It just doesn't make any sense to me. We've got speed cameras everywhere. We've got seatbelt cameras. We've got phone use cameras that detect whether you're using your mobile phone. We've got machete bins now. Look, if there's any actual machetes in these bins from criminals, I think all of us would be absolutely shocked, right? They're going to be from old ladies who were using it to cut coconuts, not from criminals. Which criminal's going out and saying, look, I'm going to hang on, what? I'm off to go and, do some damage here, but I saw a machete bin, so I'll stick it in the machete bin. Hate speech. Hate speech is another one. This is about protecting people from offensive speech or offensive language against race, gender, religion, that kind of thing. Look, religion's okay, just as long as it's not Christianity, mind you. That's the religion of hate, according to authorities. I think that's the narrative that is being pushed. But it's morphed into something more than that. Now we can be found guilty of fat shaming and misgendering people, that kind of thing. Heaven forbid we should do that. The threat to democracy. What does this translate to? What's this threat to democracy business? Look, you're democratic as long as you're on our side. But in a democracy, there's going to be varying views. That's how it works. And do we really allow varying views anymore? The media might interview someone with a varying opinion or a slightly different opinion, but I can tell you that they're going to shut them down and shame them if it's not in line with the mainstream view. That's not democracy. Conspiracy theorist. Obviously, we've all heard of the conspiracy theorist. What's that translate to? Don't investigate. Don't connect any dots. Don't ask any questions. If you do, you're a cooker. You're a tinfoil hat wearer. Everyone knows a good conspiracy theorist, but no one wants to be labelled one, right? National security. National security. So the translation here is we don't really need to explain anything. We do what we feel is necessary. ASIO. Let's have a look at ASIO's website here. We don't just do what is lawful, we do what is right. Can you tell me, please, what the hell does that mean? Isn't the law itself right? We don't do what is lawful, we do what is right. Maybe I'm not smart enough to comprehend this, but it suggests that they may act outside the law in the name of national security. Now, I'm not making any claims against ASIO. I really cannot be bothered with a SWAT team of 15 blokes coming in through my roof at 4 o'clock in the morning. But as far as national security is concerned, the law appears to be secondary, at least according to ASIO's website. Believe it or not, one of humanity's greatest fears is actually isolation. It's not physical pain. Isolation pain, or the fear of isolation beats the fear of actual physical pain. So authorities are using labels to socially destroy you before you even think or open your mouth. Control the language, control the thought. Control the thought, control the behaviour. George Orwell said, if thought controls language, language can also corrupt thought. So they don't need to arrest you. They can just call you dangerous, anti-authority, extremist, conspiracy theorist, a sov-cit. Yeah, I'm not going to say the word because they'll put a label on my video, but you know what they're referring to. I'm not one of those, by the way. I've nothing to do with any of that. I don't know anyone who is. I don't think it's even possible to be one. And what happens? The crowd themselves turns on you. It wasn't too long ago that I was wandering down the street with my dog in broad daylight on a beautiful day, and I was scolded for not wearing a face nappy. That's the crowd doing its job. This is how tyranny hides inside democracy. The real goal here is engineered obedience. They don't want agreement, they want submission. Obedience without force. Control without visible chains. And the control narrative starts very early in our lives. At preschool, at school, in the cartoons that the kiddies watch, right? In their TV shows, in our movies, at universities, in the media, government, corporations. Narratives are being pushed across all of this from when we're very little. But we need to be aware of this, just like in my last video that I did on your superannuation or your retirement account and your bank accounts. What can we actually do about it? Well, the first step is awareness. If nobody's aware of it, no one can do anything about it. And the same here. Recognize this kind of language, be aware of it, and it loses its power. When they label someone, ask, what are they hiding? When they say safety, ask, safety for who? When they say misinformation, ask, misinformation according to who? According to the AAP. Well, who's the AAP? The most dangerous thing that you can do from today onwards is think for yourself, which is exactly why I will never stop doing what I'm doing here. If you've ever been labelled for simply asking questions or having an opinion, using your brain, this video's for you. Remember, I'm not telling you what to think. This video is designed to help you notice the language. So share this video with someone who you think might need to hear it. Someone who's maybe waking up, someone who's totally asleep. I really appreciate you listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.